I'm pissed off because justice, Dr. King said it best, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And damn it if we're going to play that game here in Broward County. Before I get into the details and the specific nature of why we're here, I just want to identify the folks who are participating in this press conference as we're standing here unified about our concerns related to this incident. Two are with me today as attorneys representing our three deputies. One is Eric Schwartzreich, Jeremy Kroll, and Michael Gottlieb. The reason for this unified stance is related to what we deem and identify as a miscarriage of justice, and that three of our law enforcement deputies, while in the performance of their duties in compliance with our rules and regulations, have been charged with aggravated battery. It's appalling to witness this take place here in this community. And before I elaborate and show extended videos to further be accountable and transparent to this community, I'm going to remind you of what I've said for 6 consecutive years as your two-time duly elected sheriff of this county. And that is, when I know, you will know. And that everyone in this organization will be held accountable. And everyone in this community will be held to the same standard. I have demonstrated that consistently for 6 years, to the extent of which I've terminated 141 officers under my command. There hasn't been a sheriff in this state or in this country that has demonstrated that level of aggressive nature of holding law enforcement and public safety professionals responsible. And of those 141 plus cases, 98 times, 98, we have submitted over to the state attorney recommending prosecution. And I'm going to run down this one year after the next. This starts in my first year in 2019. 14 cases was recommended. Of those 14, 7 were declined by the state attorney's office. In 2020, 16 cases were submitted. 12 were declined by the state attorney's office. In 2021, 14 cases were submitted and 10 of them were declined by the state attorney's office. 2022, 17, 13 declined. 2023, 22 submitted, 15 declined. 2024, 13 submitted, 8 declined. And as of yet in 2025, we submitted 2 and already 50% of them are declined. This agency has been the toughest against corruption than in the history of this entire county. And we do it right here. Our internal affairs are remarkable. Our leadership core, our commanders, we don't pinch pennies and we don't dodge our responsibility. And we don't care what last name is associated to the people that are responsible for wrongdoings in this community. Numerous times we've submitted cases where individuals who happen to have the popular names of Thurston were ignored. An individual deputy we had here who was a terror in Pompano Beach, abusing young black men time over again, until we had him dead to rights, where he was terminated from this organization, and we recommended that he would be prosecuted, and those charges were dismissed, only for him to take a job in our school system and then batter and abuse another child. So I will not accept the nature of these charges against these women. The video is crystal clear that they had demonstrated only the level of force necessary to get this individual back in compliance. Our standard is reasonable, necessary, in proportion to the threat of which we face. That is not just BSO standard, that is every walking, talking law enforcement official in the United States, from the federal down to the counties. It's the same standard. And how do we get to a position where, of all these cases that we've submitted and recommended, that deputies, officers, firefighters, or anyone else in this agency be arrested and prosecuted, and this becomes the selected 3? This is most certainly a miscarriage of justice and exhibits signs and symptoms of public corruption in itself. Favors for friends. And so I start to ask the question, what is the nexus amongst the individuals that is selectively charged and those who are not? Is it their last name? Is it their power play or influence in this community? I am topped out and sick and tired of seeing public corruption and favor for friends in government from the federal level all the way down to here in Broward County. And it's going to come to an end. We're going to continue to investigate and examine the nature of this case, despite where we are headed in terms of our internal outcome, because we will not live in a community where there's some justice for individuals and then there's not justice for some. It's appalling. I hate to come off in such a high-level temperament at the beginning of this press conference. But folks, these women were handcuffed, arrested, and their reputations have been destroyed. On average, they're hitting almost 20 years apiece. Sergeant Polk have done 22 years in this organization. 22, outstanding. Never an issue on any of these deputies in terms of their conduct in the performance of maintaining some of the worst people in society. Every year, this jail processes over 44,000 inmates. And these women who are now being persecuted are the ones that have been stood and standing at the front line, protecting and serving this community and doing it at the highest level of professionalism. Not once have we had an issue of excessive force with either or any of the three of these employees. And so that leads me to, yes, standing here unified with their defense attorneys, because this is righteous. There's been times where myself and these men and these attorneys, we've been at war in a difference of opinion about actions I've taken in this community or for this community within this agency. But today we stand together because this is right. And we cannot allow a Pandora's box of law enforcement officials in this county being arrested and prosecuted when there's no probable cause, but only indicators that there's a potential that this is being done for somebody else as a favor. And I'm going to highlight so many different elements of concern with this investigation thus far. To begin with, the nature of the arrest. My deputy, Deputy Guzman, conducted a DUI investigation of this inmate, of this suspect, and arrested her with justified probable cause. And the assistant state attorney kicks the case under the premise that he was not a drug recognition expert, that there may be some contributing factor because the inmate was on her menstrual cycle. Folks, I'm not making this stuff up. This is what I've read. This is what we've reviewed. This is what we've analyzed. Now, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been a college professor for 18. I have taught every single course in the criminal justice field to include constitutional law and criminal law. And I've yet to see a defense called the menstrual cycle. So I'm asking the questions. Why is the state going out of its way for this particular case? My deputy conducted 650 DUI investigations, all of which, until now, were submitted and filed and charged by the state attorney, except this case. Why is that? There's a ripple effect of such decisions that will impact now Deputy Guzman in his ability to continue to be a DUI expert, which he is, and conduct these type of investigations with a flawless track record, which increases the probability of making sure these individuals don't get away with this to do it a second time, a third time, or until they kill somebody in a car accident. They dismissed the charge. And by the way, no, she wasn't under the influence of alcohol from what we've been able to identify, but the toxicology report came back and showed that she was amped up on amphetamines. But he's not an expert. It's absurd. I'm going to move on and get into this video in a second, and we're going to show you certain segments of this video, but I'll preface with the overview. This woman came in agitated and cranked up on drugs, and that's no different than many of which my deputies in that jail encounter. That's not new to us. That's not a threat to others. That's not foreign to them. But she came in and she had resistance from second after second, agitated after the next. And you strike a deputy in the line of duty, and now the expectation that the state attorney is pushing out is that of this. If you get struck in the line of duty, if the suspect get injured, then we're not going to prosecute cases, and we're going to dismiss those charges. What are you saying to the 5,000 law enforcement officers that are serving this community? And what message are you sending to the suspects that we are going to have to fight and defend our lives with or against? This is too big to allow it to happen, folks. And that's why I'm here. What message are we sending? You don't get a free pass to strike, injure, hurt, or harm any of my goddamn deputies in this agency. None of them. We will respond as professionals. We will respond with the necessary force in proportion to the threat, and it will be reasonable. And if it's not, then I will terminate them. But that message is absolutely inappropriate. They dropped the battery charges that were filed after the suspect placed her hands, struck, scratched, kicked, and bit one of my deputies to the level of force that it not only penetrated her skin, but it fractured her bones. And that charge was dismissed. And they're going to move forward and charge the deputies, who you will see in a moment, who not only responded effectively, gained custody, but then provided the immediate care for her with zero conflict throughout that process. There was no tripping of the suspect and bouncing the suspect off the walls. They walked her down the hallway. She received the medical care that she needed, and then they brought water into her cell and monitored her to make sure that she was okay. Despite the fact that she had already injured them, despite the fact that she was high up on drugs, they still did what was right. And if that type of conduct is suitable for aggravated battery charges upon an officer, I can tell you right now that I have been guilty of such conduct for 20 years of my law enforcement career. For 20 years. And every officer up here is guilty. And every officer patrolling your streets right now is guilty. We better start figuring out what do we want for this community and ensure that justice has only but one standard. I don't care what your name is. I don't care if it's the Caputos, the Thurstons, the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, the Trumps, or the goddamn Obamas. It doesn't matter when you're in Broward County. Everyone's going to be held to the same standard. Now, I'm going to show this video and allow it to play out. We're going to start with what you already seen. After repeated orders and instructions to vacate the clothing items, to be in compliance with our rules and regulations, there's a back and forth, agitation, disputes, profanity, dismissal of the commands, and they still afforded her the opportunity to comply. We've seen that thus far. And then we'll move forward to where the physical altercation begins. I know you've already seen it, so we're going to speed some of this up because there's a lot to cover here today. Now, throughout that engagement, the suspect decides she's going to be a smarty pants and throw the bra and try to hit the deputy in her face. The deputy captures it, pushes her back to disengage, and then you have this suspect deciding that she's going to lunge forward to try to assault this deputy. And the efforts are made to control her, not to brutally beat her, not to create some form of great bodily harm or injury upon her, which are some of the statutory stipulations for aggravated battery. That's not what's occurring here. She was sprayed with OC, they tried to tase her, and she's still fighting. Then it's asserted that somehow they mysteriously or egregiously attempted to hide and pull her behind the line. It's absurd. Did our deputies strike her? You better believe they did. If you bite me in the hand and decide that you're going to sink your teeth into me as a law enforcement officer in this community, there's going to be two outcomes, folks. Two outcomes. I'm going to strike you in your face until you let go, or I'm going to strike you until you don't have any teeth in your mouth. That's the real world. Let's not play any games with this. You don't get a free pass at law enforcement officers. If that's what this community expects, they can vote me out of office in 2028. Now we'll move on into the part where the active resistance is over and these officers, you can see for yourself, because of the nature of these allegations and what's been perpetrated within the state attorney's office, now I have to release security-based videos that we traditionally do not. But I'm not going to let these women get hung like this is some Salem witch trial. It's not happening on my watch. If they want to come for those deputies, they better come for me first. We could speed up and show the after effect where they're in the hallway. I want this community to see these women who, by the way, one of them is standing there with a broken thumb and still concerned about the inmates' care. Where's the brutality there? Where's your aggravated battery? Where's your rogue, unprofessional deputies? Where's the lack of discipline? You show me, you tell me. She couldn't even hold her own head up for a photo. They take the picture, we'll move on to the next progression. Back up just a little bit. I don't want to be accused that we're speeding through stuff. Right there. They're still checking on her care. They're still trying to get her situated. Does that look like a bunch of overly emotional rogue deputies that doesn't have discipline to be in a professional capacity to care for someone who just assaulted them and broke the bones in their fingers? They continue to check on her, and then they provide her water and allow this woman to calm down and come off of her high. And that continues for several more moments with zero additional contact from my deputies and zero level of assertion or any aggravated tensions to create any more problems that this suspect created, and not these officers. So we could pause there. So we're moving forward from an internal affairs standpoint. Our investigation has been completed. All 3 deputies will be reinstated to full capacity, and they've been either exonerated of these false allegations or it's been unfounded. I will not allow these women to sit in shame and embarrassment and have to pay for high-priced attorneys when they've been righteous. And that brings me to another point. These attorneys will be paid for by the Broward Sheriff's Office. These deputies are not going to pay 1 penny in defense of this. That concludes my overview, and I'm going to pause, and I'll lead over and start with Mr. Gottlieb to talk about his opinion on the nature of this case and how he intends to represent his client.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you all for coming today. I stand with the sheriff and the unions in condemning the prosecution of my client, Cleopatra Johnny. The video evidence in this case clearly shows a combative inmate who was arrested for driving under the influence. Once in the care, custody, and control of the sheriff, inmates are meant to conform their behaviors to simple guidelines for their own safety and well-being. This person did not. She became verbally and physically combative. The deputies involved here used the requisite level of force needed to control the situation, to defend themselves, and to de-escalate the dangerous situation that was taking place in that jail cell. Their actions are within agency guidelines and the appropriate standard of conduct. They are not illegal, and they should not be prosecuted. I am confident at the end of the day, this case will end with an exoneration for this wrongful prosecution. Thank you.
Mr. Crow?
Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. First, I want to commend Sheriff Tony and the administration of the Broward Sheriff's Office for the intellectual response to this case. Certainly, people have strong feelings when it comes to the use of force by police officers, and I think objectively, we can all agree that where a police officer or a detention deputy steps out of line and crosses that line, there should be accountability for that. And I think, even though we haven't always agreed on where that line is, you've seen this sheriff strongly refer cases that he thinks are over the line. So I hope it's not lost how extraordinary it is that in this circumstance, not only does he believe that line's not crossed, but that he's exonerating these deputies and putting them back on full duty. My client, Dania Walker, is a mom. She's a single mom. She's a 10-year veteran of the Broward Sheriff's Office. Every day for 10 years, she's done a job that probably a lot of people wouldn't want to do, which is to process people in the worst days of their lives. And she's done it honorably. She's done it through the procedures and the training that she's gotten from the Broward Sheriff's Office. And she deserves the presumption of innocence that she's afforded under our Constitution because she is innocent in this case. We appreciate you coming here, and we appreciate and hope that you'll cover this part of this case with the same fervor and the same attention as the initial arrests were covered. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Eric, would you like to speak?
Of course. Good morning, everyone. Sheriff, I want to thank you. As you've heard Sheriff Tony say, it's not every day, it's not often that we've been on the same side. We are defense attorneys. Mr. Gottlieb, Mr. Kroll, and I, we represent law enforcement from time to time. We also represent civilians or anyone that gets accused of a crime. And to have the sheriff in this particular case, and you see how passionate he is, and we're fortunate to have him, but stand up for these deputies, and I echo what Mr. Kroll said, that these deputies are presumed innocent until proven guilty, which is not going to happen. This is an important case for law enforcement. It's an important case for detention deputies. Detention deputies, law enforcement, we thank you for the job that you do, for keeping us safe, for keeping us secure, for going into alleys with your badges and places that most people wouldn't even go. It's not an easy job. And sometimes you get Monday morning quarterbacked or you get arrested for doing your jobs. Sometimes it's rightfully arrested. Most of the time it appears to be wrongfully arrested. No one wants bad apples in law enforcement, not even the sheriff, and you've seen that before, not defense lawyers. We take cases where we believe, and the sheriff doesn't always see it the way we see it, where someone is wrongfully arrested. This case, these deputies should not have been arrested. The evidence is going to show that officers are allowed to use justifiable use of force, any force, in the course of an arrest and or detention. Mr. Kroll and I have argued the stand your ground law for other deputies successfully, because deputies, officers, are allowed not only to have an affirmative defense and use justifiable force, but they're also immune, like anyone that gets the tagline a defendant when they go in the criminal justice system, from prosecution. My client, Sergeant Polk, is an honorable deputy, and as a result of this incident, her finger was bit, her bone in her finger was broken. I believe that was mentioned in the arrest warrant here. She had to undergo and take an HIV, I want to use the right term, cocktail or pill for like a month. She had an infection, and she received a broken bone. And this case was never reported by the arrestee in this case. This case was brought much later. It shouldn't have been brought. We're thankful to the sheriff, to the men and women of law enforcement, and we're hopeful that when everything is shown here, that these deputies are going to be fully exonerated. And thank you for coming today.
We have not opened up and start exploring deeply all the details about this in terms of investigation. I've been doing this for 20 years, okay? And I understand, as the sheriff, I receive phone calls at night and people want favors, and I tell them no. And I know that out of the 141 cases that if we've sent over for prosecution, I'm gonna go back to that number, right? 66 of them have been declined. 66 out of that 98 that we submitted have been declined. And I've asked questions about those at times. You follow what I'm saying, Tony? And so I'm asking questions about this one. What is the driving factor that out of all of these cases that we've submitted over the last 6 years, that this is the one where the assistant state attorney says, we're going to hold law enforcement accountable? To what standard? To what criminal violation? To what policy violation are they holding these individuals accountable? So yes, I get to speculate today. I get to speculate. I've been on the other side of this, Tony, as you know. For 6 years, I was falsely accused and drug out by a corrupt FDLE agent up there who had his own agenda. So no, I don't dismiss the fact that that same level of tainted corruption could exist at the state attorney's office. And I hope that enough people pay attention to this that a comprehensive investigation is done independent of this agency, and should someone be guilty of violating the law at the state attorney's office, I have no problems with putting them in handcuffs. It's not what I'm saying, it's what you just seen, sir. Did you not see the video where, in response to her assault, that these deputies applied a reasonable level of force in proportion to the level that she indicated a threat, and take care and custody of her and provide the necessary medical aid to her? We all just seen that, correct? I get to ask the question apparently. I mean, seriously, did we not just see that?
Have you spoken to the state attorney about this, about this case?
The one thing I will share with you is I have a standard policy and practice amongst communicating with all elected officials on any issues that I deem a concern. And I don't share those conversations with the public or anyone else. The state attorney, despite my opinion on what his folks are doing over there in this case, he has every right to be able to call me as a co-partner in this criminal justice system and know that I will not disclose one bit of what he says over the phone. And I expect the same out of him. I was pretty clear about the cases I've been concerned with where there hasn't been consistency in us charging.
You mentioned Thurston.
Yeah, Ron Thurston speaks for itself. We have a bunch more cases we can open up to the public for consumption, and you can analyze and formulate your own opinion on it. But that case in itself has sent a red flag amongst this entire organization, in that we had video footage of him striking an individual in handcuffs, ramming the guy's head against. We warned about the behavior of this officer. He had a horrendous track record in terms of internal affairs. And we did what we were supposed to do from an administrative team. I did what I was supposed to do and terminated him and said he must be brought up on charges. And here's all the real evidence, physical, circumstantial, video-based evidence to successfully prosecute that individual, and it didn't happen. Only for him to go back and batter someone else.
What's the Caputo connection?
You tell me. There's enough investigative reporters in here. Start doing your research, because I'd like to know.
Well, you're making the allegation.
And it's a fair allegation. I'd like to know. Any other questions? The way this was dropped off on us, do you recall this arrest took place 2 years ago? October 2022? And now we're standing here where they get charged May of last month? What has been going on over the last 2 years that this case has sat on someone's desk that all of a sudden it's time to charge these deputies inappropriately with aggravated battery? Yes, it's time for us to speculate. Don't forget the fact that we are also investigators, folks. The state attorney cases, his success that he has is based on the backs of the law enforcement investigators and our ability to put thorough and comprehensive cases together in front of them that they can prosecute. So if this idea that we're going to miss the breadcrumbs that suggests there's something going wrong, that there's a possibility that there has been some inappropriate behavior to take place, I'm going to say it. And I don't care whose feelings get hurt, because they didn't care about these women being dragged out on national TV in handcuffs and their families and their kids going through this torment and everything else is costing them, their dignity, their pride, their lack of sleep. I'm not guessing. I know what it feels like because I've gone through it. So the state better get this right. If I have to go back to law school and defend these women myself, I will do it. What's your opinion?
I try not to have an opinion.
And that's where I'm going to answer your question. They used a level of force that was in compliance with our use of force matrix in an attempt to gain care and control over this woman again. So it looked appropriate to me, it looked appropriate to our professional standards committee, and they are exonerated.